I don't know if I want to say that.
You should. You should say what you're thinking.
I don't know if I want to say it because, I mean, I think that I've experienced rejection in the past. And the rejection that I've experienced, I would say partially was a direct rejection to me. And it wasn't to me, but it was surrounding me, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, I say this oftentimes, you know, my mom rejected my biological father. And because of that rejection, I saw it, but I didn't know where it was coming from. But growing up, I saw some things with my dad, and it was because of him being rejected by mom. And then because of me realizing that, wow, my mom did that to my dad, I felt rejected.
Yeah.
And then I started rejecting others.
Yeah.
Because the fear of being rejected.
Hurt people hurt people. That's the reality. And I think, like, so I was actually talking to...
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Bird 91 is your favorite dating and relationship coach. We're back again talking about attachment styles. Yes, we're specifically focusing on dismissive avoidant this time. And we're going to be talking about how they fear the rejection. One of the core wounds of a dismissive avoidant is the fear of rejection. I can tell that for free because I am a dismissive avoidant growing into a secure position and learning that rejection actually is a blessing, and actually it's actually an opportunity to begin to grow as well in that place. Especially love what Nona Jones talks about. But I want to focus on the attachment style dismissive avoidant. If you're new to that, simply what that means is that John Bowlby, who's a British psychologist, and then Mary Ainsworth, who's also British, added on some extra parts in it. And what John Bowlby observed was little children and how they were with a caregiver. And when the caregiver left the room, how did the child actually react? The child reacted either by crying, a child had no reaction, or the child may have been ready to re-engage with a parent caregiver and came back to the caregiver in a secure manner, right? And then there's another child that would actually begin to cling or not want to go to somebody else or fearful of attaching to other people, right? And that was usually the anxious person. But anyway, to say that when we grow into adult relationships, depending on what attachment style we had, depending on how we were with a caregiver when we were young, right? It affects the way that we attach in relationships. For instance, the dismissive avoidant will struggle in the area of intimate relationships and being too emotional because they never really had that as children. And so they were often neglected and rejected for their emotions. And so their emotions were told to them by the actions of the caregiver that they weren't important. So the child learns out of survival to suppress, repress, and push away their emotions. Yeah. And so it becomes a natural tendency that when you go into relationships to dismiss either your needs or other people's needs. And so, or your emotions and other people's emotions, right? You're not as quote unquote in tune. And what that leads to is what we call rejection, the fear of rejection. And the reason why is because oftentimes the dismissive avoidant has rejected themselves. We're going to talk about it in a second or two. Okay, before we go any further, again, please do like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notifications of uploads. We appreciate you guys. I'm going to turn up the heat on this particular video, but make sure you don't change over that channel. Okay, all right, we want to help as many people as we can, and if this sounds like something you're going through, then you definitely need to pay attention to this video. We're here to help you as much as we can. Okay, so as you heard from obviously Anthony O'Neill, he talks about how his mother rejected his father. That created fear in him. He had been rejected himself, and so he ended up in turn rejecting others. This is actually a projection, but I'll talk about that in part 2, where you project your fears onto other people and then you anticipate them doing what you believe about yourself, and you actually reject them before they reject you. We'll do that in part 2. Today we're going to focus on the fear of rejection for the dismissive avoidant. The dismissive avoidant fears rejection because that's exactly what they received as children. So let's listen to Nona a little bit more and go on further.
So my makeup artist, before I even came here, we were talking about relationships, and she's single, and this idea that...
Beautiful.
Listen, I can make the connection now. Don't worry. I can make the connection.
I just need to ask the question.
But we were talking about how she was saying it's so hard to really find a man who, number one, wants to commit.
It is not. Let's talk about rejection.
Where's your wedding ring?
What you mean? Hold on.
Right,
Just because I don't have a wedding ring, sis,
commit
doesn't mean I don't want to commit.
Actually, it does.
No.
That's just like somebody being.
Oh,
that's just like somebody being like,
You know who you remind me of right now? She reminds me of Sarah Jake.
I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight, but I don't go to the gym.
But it doesn't mean that person has a problem with the gym, though.
But it means they're not committed to what they want. Because what?
Now, before we get any further, because it's going to derail the conversation, I agree with her and don't agree with her. you not being married does not mean you have a problem with commitment. It may mean that you also have raised your standards and you're waiting for the right type of relationship. So let's not conflate the two. I do believe what she's saying, but she has inside knowledge of him. So I think that's why she said it that way. But the reality of the situation is, you not being married does not necessarily mean that you're afraid of commitment. It may mean that that you realize, as you've done the healing work, which I hope you have, then you realize that your standing goes higher. And so therefore the people coming towards you, actually you're realizing that they're not suitable for you. And I'm of the school of thought now that as a man, you have to be very careful who you date. Not because they're bad, but rather because the way that you can show up, you need a person that you find attractive, but you can like as well. Meaning you can love her, but you like who she is. When you don't do that, and you don't like the person who she is, you get half a man. Same with women too, right? But I'm just saying that from a man's perspective. So going back on to what we're talking about, dismissive avoidance, right? Dismissive avoidance, the biggest issue that they have is that they fear intimate relationships, okay? They fear the fact that people getting close to them, because what it will do is, if you get close to them, they're fearing that they may lose their autonomy. And so a dismissive avoidant will try to avoid emotional connections and attachments and closeness to people until they fully trust those people. And it can take years sometimes to get close into the inner circle or inner mind of the dismissive avoidant, because a lot of times the dismissive avoidant is skeptical and suspicious of people because they have a high esteem of themselves but a lower esteem of others, meaning they don't trust other people to hold their feelings and emotions safe because their parents never did. And so they will end up rejecting people ahead of time because they don't believe that you can hold their emotions and their vulnerability. They don't believe that you will respect you will fulfill their needs and what they want, because they were never fulfilled as a child. So what is the point of telling you about what my needs are? Because you won't meet them anyway. And then, so what you realize is that the person is actually already beginning to self-abandon themselves. They won't tell you what their needs and wants are, but they still have those wants and needs. And so when the person that they're in talking to or relating to, hold on a minute, have I got something on lip? Damn. Sorry about that. Apologies. That is nasty. Forgive me. But yes, so what you'll realize is with the dismissive avoidant is that they will, because they fear that their needs are not going to be met, they will end up pushing you away. Because they'll feel like you're doing too much. They'll feel like, you know what, there's no point doing this. You're pulling stuff from me. Okay? And I don't like that feeling. So they end up trying to push you away. Okay? And that's what we're getting from Anthony as he's exploring, right? And so what you'll realize also, because their rejection, also the fear is also being misjudged or misunderstood. So there's three things: rejection, their needs not being met, and misjudged and misunderstood. And also you can add appreciation, acknowledgement, and affirmations. This will cause them to want to pull away from you because they're feeling rejected. In fact, in most of the reasons why they have an issue with something, it comes down to oftentimes they feel rejected from what was happening. Maybe your critique was too harsh. Maybe you're too needy. Maybe you're this, maybe that. And whatever it is, it oftentimes boils down to a core wound of, I just feel rejected in this moment. And when I feel rejected, I want to pull away. Okay, so the fear of dismissive avoidance is that you're rejecting them. So so if you look at yourself and you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, the key question to ask is, what behaviors am I doing that may look like they're being rejected? And it doesn't mean necessarily you are rejecting them, but they may be reading it as that. And so they need a safe space to be able to explore and come to you and say how they feel. Now, I always say this, I practice self-accountability, meaning if I'm the one that's getting triggered, I really need to come towards you and really be able to create my own safe space so that I can say, hey, this is what I need from you, and not always that you create it for me. Because what I need from me, I need to be able to produce it for myself first. If you're always producing it for me, then what happens when you're not here, right? And that can be sometimes hyper-independence, because as a dismissive, you should be able to co-regulate. But why I'm saying that is that you need to have also that emotional safety with yourself first. That then transcends and bleeds into relations with others. So yeah, as he's describing about his fear, yes, commitment will be an issue.
What you want, you will. Okay, so anyway, let me get off this. We're about to have an intervention. Let me get back to what I was saying. Look at what I'm saying. So what I was saying is, hurt people. And so she was talking about how hard it is to find a guy who wants to commit. And then we started talking about the red pill community, right?
Yeah.
How there's this manosphere of men who are just angry at women, and they just were like, women are this, that, and the other.
Okay.
what I believe in my heart of hearts, and I have not talked to anybody in the so-called manosphere, is
Okay, talk to me.
these are a bunch of men who have experienced rejection.
And she's absolutely right. She has. These men do experience rejection, and they've not found a safe space within themselves to be able to begin to do the process of healing. And that's why they're angry at women, but they're really angry at themselves. It's a projection. And so a lot of people in that space of dismissive avoidant can take accountability, but the reality of the situation is what they don't have is self-compassion. And when you don't have self-compassion, what you'll realize is without that compassionate piece to say, let me show you where compassion will lie for you, okay? Compassion will definitely play a part in the risks versus mistakes, right? And your value, okay? And help with problems. Like, dismissive avoidance will tend to not want to ask anybody for problems because they don't have compassion for themselves, right? So they believe that, you know what, I don't want to bother nobody. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be on anybody's toes. And then when it comes to even making mistakes, they're hard on themselves because they're lacking compassion for themselves. They're willing to be accountable, but they're lacking compassion. But the problem with that is when you lack compassion, but you're always accountable, eventually you do run out of steam. You run out of steam because you're always able to say, I need to do better, I need to do better, I need to do better, whilst at the same time not able to even congratulate yourself or even say that well done for this or well done for that. You don't take stock and be gratuitous, which comes up as an emotional safety. Okay, you're unable to be gratuitous or optimistic sometimes in those spaces because you lack compassion for self. And so rejection of others is always a rejection of self. You've rejected something about yourself. You've abandoned something about yourself. You've rejected your wants and needs. You've rejected your feelings and emotions. You've rejected those aspects of you. So what's going to happen? When you see other people existing in that plane, it irks you and you want to reject them as well. Okay? So we're going to leave it there. We'll do a part 2 and talk about it a little bit later. I appreciate you guys. Stay locked.